Hello there, sword friends. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about tariffs and the impact to sword buyers, sword manufacturers, and kind of keep it about swords. I know the media talks about this quite a bit already, but I thought I would try to do a little bit more of a focus on swords, and hopefully it is helpful to you if you are a person buying a sword and wondering, should I buy something now? Should I wait till later? What is the cost going to be? What if everything goes back to normal? What if it goes up? What if it goes down? What happens? And so hopefully I can shed a little bit of light on that subject. I both deal with tariffs professionally in my day job, and I obviously talk to a lot of folks in the community, and I ask them their thoughts as well. And hopefully what I give you is, if nothing else, useful, but might inform you on when you want to buy or what you want to buy. And that's admittedly the goal. Now, some disclaimers for you, as I'm famous for. One, these are not particularly accurate figures because it's an ever-evolving situation. So if you are listening to percentages of tariffs, bear in mind that those are fluctuating and changing. They go up, they go down, and you shouldn't use any of this as kind of tried and true fact that the tariffs are that particular thing. They might have been at the time, but it's also a little fuzzy at the moment. Everyone is dealing with little different tidbits of information and interpretation, and so anyway, don't take the percentages as gospel. Two, this is an entirely political thing, which I tend not to cover on my channel. If you are a big fan of the guy that put him in place or a vehement hater of the guy that put him in place, that's not really the point of the video. The idea is to say, here is what is going on, and here is the impact. So not trying to be political, but this is admittedly a political thing, which I tend to try to avoid on the channel. Like any other person, I have opinions. I just don't share them because I'm not very informed. But on this particular subject, I have a little bit more expertise. Hopefully I can impart a little bit of information about what's happening and how it impacts you as a person who might want to buy a sword. Structure for the video is going to be me talking a little bit about tariffs and explaining them slightly, and then I'm going to let my guests talk a little bit about their thing. I'll introduce them before and tell you a little bit about their business, and then I'll wrap it up with some things that I think could have been done a little differently or that would have helped and might help going forward. But also I'll talk a little bit about what it looks like if they go up, down, or my opinions on them for what they're worth. Anyway, that's the structure. Okay, tariffs. What the hell are they? Honestly, I'm not actually going to explain a whole lot here because the media has explained a lot, and it's a subject that a lot of people have become familiar with. But effectively, it's a tax that people pay when they import things. Not people, well, tomorrow people, but generally it has been businesses that import things. They have to pay a tax on that when they bring it into the country, and that's the tariffs that's associated with it. So it's a tax. There's a couple important things to know. One, it's paid up front. And two, if you don't want to pay it up front, it's very costly to do that and not really applicable to the sword realm of things. And three, most individuals, if they buy something from a company overseas, namely China, have been exempt for this largely and won't be in the future. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a moment, but effectively know that it's a tariff that's being, or a tax that's being imposed on the people that are selling the goods to you, which means the cost of the goods they sell has gone up. If historically you have bought a thing for $1 and you want to sell it to somebody else and there hasn't been much of a tariff, maybe a very small one, maybe like 1% or something like that. So you pay, and in the end for your $1, $1 and a penny, and that's the cost of the good you have. Well, now you can sell it for whatever you want, but you have to get more than that. Now, today, at least of the recording of this video, the cost is 145% for the tariff. And it could be different depending on the amount of steel, which is important and relevant. That can sometimes drive the tariff down or up. I've heard different things. But effectively, the cost could be more than 145%, could be a little less than 145%, and it's changing all the time. But today, figure 145%, which means that if the cost was $1 and after your previous tariffs was $1 and a penny, tomorrow it's going to be $2.45 for that same good, which means that you have to sell it for more than $2.45. And there's a lot of questions that go into that, which I'll talk about at the end because it gets a little pedantic. But effectively, that's kind of what's going on with a lot of these manufacturers. Now, tariffs can be different by country. They can be different by material. They can have all sorts of differences. But today, if you import a sword from China or you sell swords from China, they cost 145% more. More or less, that's it. The sword didn't change, but the tax on it got to be quite a bit more, and now you're gonna have to pay that. Now, I mentioned as well that there is a slight difference. Well, it's not that you're necessarily going to have to pay it. The vendors might try to eat some of the cost for you, but effectively the government is charging a 145% cost. That cost is likely going to have to go somewhere. So The other bit is I mentioned people have been exempt from this in the past. There's been a rule called de minimis, which largely means that if you import goods that are under $800, that you haven't had to pay any import fees. As of May 1st, that is supposed to go away. Initially, I heard that it was going to be a $25 charge or 30% of the value of the item. So if you bought a $50 sword, you would pay $25 for it. If you bought a $100 sword, you would pay $30 more in that tax. That's as of May 1st. But then I heard that was $100. I also heard it was going up January 1st. And initially it was going from 25 to 50, but then it was going from 100 to 200. So it's fluctuating quite a bit, but effectively that means that if you are importing swords directly from China, you are affected. There will be a 30% tariff that may have to be paid by the person exporting it upfront, or it may have to be paid by you. I don't know how the Postal Service is going to collect these funds, but hopefully there is a way to do it. I'm not exactly sure on which one. That would be really helpful for me to know. Unfortunately, I do not at this time. But there is an important bit to know that if you are importing something after May 1st, there is a cost, and that cost is supposed to be going up as of the recording of this video on the 1st of June or June 2nd, somewhere in there. Anyway, you are no longer exempt if you are buying things and having them directly drop shipped from China. There is a cost to doing that. And I'm not sure who's going to have to pay it. But it is worth noting that, hey, if you were like, I don't buy from these stores that sell these swords, I go and get my stuff directly from the manufacturer. Well, that may also have an impact, and it could be more or less. And I've also heard that 30% is fluctuating, so it may not be 30%. You might say, well, 30% is a lot better than 145%, particularly if you're dealing with swords towards that $800 price point. Well, it also has fluctuated to maybe more than 100%. So it may not be great. Again, it's fluctuating, but expect that if you are having things imported from China directly from manufacturers, there will be a tariff. China is the most hit at the moment at 145%, and other places have different tariffs. Steel still applies, as well as, potentially some other tariffs, but China is where a lot of swords are manufactured, where a lot of people get their goods, and it is the most impacted by the tariff. But everywhere else may well have a tariff as well. I left out the part about capital and why this is hard for businesses. Sorry, it's a complex topic. The gist is, in my analogy, you have a sword that's $1. I know that's not real, but humor me. And you're going to bring in 1,000 of them because you think that's what you can sell. And realistically, you're probably paying about a 3% duty or an import fee when you bring those swords in. So you have $1,000 expenditure for the product, and then you have to pay $30 to get the taxes sorted. Well, now that's 145% if it's from China. It's very specific to China. I know they come from India, they come from Nepal, they come from all over the world. Those will have import fees too, but an enormous amount of swords come from China. That's where this focus tends to be. So anyway, now you're going to have to come up in this analogy with another $1,450, and you have to come up with it immediately. There are exceptions to that. There involve trade-free zones in different warehouses, and it's very expensive, but disregard that. It's complicated and not really applicable to swords. As a business, you now have to come up with all of the money right up front. You don't get to wait to get it back, and that is going to impact. Now you might think, oh, I'm gonna sell less swords, and so you make 500 of them. But now they're not $1 a piece; they're $2 a piece or something like that. Okay, well now you're being taxed on that $2 fee, right? You have less stuff, and you're paying the same amount in taxes. So it becomes a little bit challenging. Obviously, the math is complicated to figure out, but it makes everything complicated. And having to come up with that payment right up front is an enormous expense for a lot of businesses that don't have an extra, $1,450 in the bank. And let alone when you talk about import fees on containers that are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, that expenditure up front is really, really challenging for businesses. So keep that in mind. Sorry, back to the thing. The last thing that I'll note is many of you may have imported swords that are over $800 directly from a manufacturer and never been charged. I fall into that category myself. I bought a number of swords that are more than $800 and I've never had an import fee. Why? Well, maybe you're supposed to, but I never really have. So there are fees that you may have to pay, but I don't know if it's loosely enforced or just simply haven't been collected, or if I'm negligent in paying the taxes that I'm supposed to. But I've never been assessed a fee by the government to import things, though admittedly you are supposed to for items over $800, and items over $2,500, I believe, also had a different kind of fee. So anyway, there has been some stuff there. Many of you may have bought things and just never encountered them before, but they've been there. Just I've never personally run into them, despite having things that may well have applied. But I suspect that when this gets sorted out, you're going to be paying more based on that category than you have before, because the system hopefully is going to get figured out. That's enough about tariffs for me. I want to let my guest talk now. And special thanks to everyone that participated here. There were more that would like to, but schedules couldn't necessarily align. It's a weird thing and a weird time to put yourself out there on camera and talk about tariffs and all of that kind of stuff with your business. So special thanks to everyone here that participated. The first guest that I have is David from Cult of Athena. And the thing you need to know about Cult of Athena, if you're not familiar with them, I'm surprised you watch my channel and you're not, but they are a reseller of swords based in the United States. They sell swords from all over the world, but a lot of their swords do come from China and are very impacted by this, as well as the other swords that they sell, all being impacted by some sort of tariff, one or the other. So anyway, David runs Cult of Athena, and he can explain more. So the first question is, how have tariffs impacted business? What can you share?
Yeah, I mean, so far, we haven't really felt the effect, right? We were in a pretty good position in terms of stocking up with inventory, particularly out of China. I mean, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And it was unlucky to have Hanwei have issues and go out of business. But, we had an opportunity to get a bunch of that inventory at that point before any tariffs hit. A few of the other suppliers saw this coming and really stocked up in their warehouses here in the States. So we haven't really had to take action at this point. We are getting notifications from different suppliers that they will be taking action in the near future. And because the situation is so volatile, we're just really trying to stay on the straight and narrow and see what happens when those things actually come in, start making the changes that we need to make. We don't like making them, right? We know it affects you, it affects all of our customers. And we want as many people to own a sword as possible, right? People love them, and at the prices that they've been at for the last, I know that the last 10 years has been more expensive than it was the 10 years prior to that. But at the prices that they've been at, most people have an opportunity to get something that's actually quality. And obviously, we're worried about what will happen. Even if we can talk about what price we're going to land at or what tariff we're going to land at. But anytime you're talking about more than 20, 25, 30, 40%, the number almost doesn't even really matter anymore. So we're hoping that things change and that some agreements arrive. For us, that's a possibility. Our supply chain is spread across the globe. We're not dependent on China. We've got a lot of business that comes from China. We also have a lot that comes from India, some that comes from Europe, and some that comes from the States. So, there's not I hate always making these puns, don't mean to. There's not necessarily a knife to our throat at this point. And we can rely on some of our other partners in other countries to really kind of balance out the pain. But there's no getting around it. It is pain, and I think some of the things that people don't always understand, and we get these questions like, "Well, isn't somebody else paying for it?" And no, the tariff is a tax on the importer, right? In that case, us. And so the goods don't get out of the warehouse and aren't received by us unless we pay that. And when you're asking for somebody to bring in $100,000 container, for example, and that used to be $100,000, and you planned for that in the past, that's something that you could do. When you're told, the next one's going to have another $100,000 on it, we're small businesses. This isn't just us. This is across the board. That's a big gulp, and we try and figure out how we manage that. We've got great partners. They're working on it on their end. We're working on it on our end. But it would be a lie to say that we can't pass some of this along to the customer at some point. Again, we're going down that straight and narrow path, keep it as even and killed as we can. And we're going to take it on a supplier and brand and model basis. We've got inventory to last for a good chunk of time. Everything seems to be really, really volatile and changing all the time. So the last thing that we want to do is, adjust all the prices on the 6,000 different swords that we have in the building, and then adjust them back down, a week later. So the longer we wait to see how this plays out, the better for our lives. It's just let's manage our emotions and think this through and be strategic about it and not be knee-jerk reactions. So that's our approach. but there's no way that you can say that if you're looking at say 145, 148, 150, whatever ends up getting negotiated on swords out of China, that we can maintain the prices that we're at and keep the lights on. There is hope. Yeah, there is hope. If you talk about India, the tariff right now is for, I guess, another 80 days or 70 days, just at 10%. And there are definitely articles saying that they're hoping for a renegotiated agreement by the beginning of August. That would be fantastic. If we can get that down. Just in comparison, though, the number was 2.5%. Or 2.7% last year. And so just even going up 10% on a significant portion of your business, that's an increase that we have to absorb. And yeah, sure, a difference of 8 or 7.5%, whatever it is a lot easier to absorb than what we're talking about coming out of China.
Sure.
And I think we've talked about the U.S. supply chain and what we could do there. We've certainly gone down that route and spoken with our different partners. I mean, you know who they are. They're great. And it is just a major capital investment to build out anything that could, try and come to the volume that we get from anywhere. And even when you do that, you're not looking at the prices that we've gotten. If we could scale production in the States, if the providers, the manufacturers, the makers here could, they certainly would have, because they've got 18 months to 24 months wait times, and I guarantee you they would love to get that get that backlog down, because that's only stress for them as they try and plan. And of course, they would love to get more high quality talent in there to finish the jobs and the orders that they have. But they've been trying to do that for 5 years, and it hasn't come out. So I think the prospects of us, really creating a significant portion of business coming out of the U.S., at least in the near term, is slim. But we're trying. And then the big challenge is going to be everything that comes out of China, and that's what we're trying to focus on. But again, I can talk about this for hours as we talk with everything.
So
we're kind of taking it.
I'll ask you a couple quick ones, right? In the event, because obviously you said situation is volatile, and it sounds like you're maybe in a different position than some of the other folks out there. You've got a big stock already to work on, and so you have the opportunity to be patient or not, right? You can take more stock in the pause, or you can work with what you have and hope that volatility settles. In the event the volatility is or it settles, but it settles on like a tariff rate of 1,000%. We go hard trade war, and you have like a crazy situation happening. I'm guessing the impact is that the customer is gonna get hit. What was $100 sword is now going to be $1,000 sword kind of situation. Am I reading the tea leaves right, or is it just going to be that we won't? You won't.
Yeah. What you will see is either us dropping those lines completely, or increasing prices a significant amount. You just can't keep the lights on. Here's what I found, Siri. Yeah, I know exactly. You just can't keep the lights on at that kind of thing, because you also take a look at it. If you're asking a customer to say, hey, pay $1,000 for something out of China that used to be $100, well, you'd rather be on a wait list for $1,000 on something come out of the States, but that wait list is going to be 36 to 48 months, and it's not going to be the same item that you were thinking about coming in. And I don't want to kid ourselves if a lot of our suppliers, their steel comes from outside of the States as it is. So
that's the same with American suppliers. Is that the as far as I understand it anyway, it doesn't sound like if a sword manufacturer were to start, there may not be steel available domestically to support that business in the capacity that people would be looking for, at least for the kinds of steels people laud over for swords. Or so even the domestic steel stuff is like, even the domestic suppliers of steel of swords are likely going to see price increases because the steel that they use is tariffed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also goes back to just like what some of the wait times that we see from suppliers in the U.S. is, they're unfortunately at the bottom of the list of a lot of the steel distributors here in the States. When they place an order, that doesn't mean that it gets fulfilled because they're on the lower volume side of things. So they're not at the first of the list of any of the domestic distributors of steel or domestic suppliers of steel. And again, if the steel, some of them do get steel from outside of the country, and obviously that price is going to go up, and they will have to absorb that. If anybody, you work in retail, and anybody who wants to take a look at any annual reports from publicly traded companies, and obviously we're a much smaller business and we're not a publicly traded company, you can see what the operating margins are. And companies are lucky, retail companies are lucky to be at about a 10% operating margin. And when you start talking about doubling and tripling, what a cost of goods sold is, then there is no operating margin anymore. So,
no, I suppose the change would be, and this is one of the tricks that complicates the tariff side of things, because as I understand it from my day job, if the tariff rate today on China is 100%, there's also a separate tariff for steel, which, as we understand, is an important component in the thing that we are talking about. So there's an additional tariff there, right?
Yep.
So the rate goes up pretty quickly, but that's on the finished good price that you're paying. So that's like a total. For example, if you have $100 sword, not saying that's the price of all of the things, right? But if you have $100 and it gets tariffed 100%, well, you're at $200, right? That's tough.
Yep.
But then you get like an extra 25% on there because it's made out of steel, and now you're at like more. You're at even more, right? You've got.
I think it's 225.
Yeah. Yes. It's
hard to keep track, right?
The math might check out there. The tariff rates, I'm actually thinking about what it would equate to, and I don't know if the sword entirely is 100% steel, so it may not get the 25% may not apply to 100% of the value of the item. It does get a little bit more complicated, but anyway, I don't know. That's for people that have to deal with the legal side and write the HTS codes for them. The trick is, though, that an American supplier importing steel is going to, hypothetically, of the $100 sword that an American supplier makes, a lot of it is going to go into labor. The sword probably wouldn't be $100, but for the sake of the analogy, hear me out, right? Well, if the cost of the steel was $10 to $20 of the actual $100 retail price, now that might be, $30 or $40 of the cost. So prospectively, American customers are going to see the cost go up, but not by the same degree that you will, because you're not taxed on the entirety of the good, right?
We're taxed on the we're taxed on the cost, right? We're not taxed on the retail price. So when we're giving examples, I'm assuming that's if I'm saying it's $100, that's what we're paying to get it here. Right. And so then it depends on how much can you absorb or not absorb. And we've got scenarios anywhere, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who've been running scenarios for the last 8 weeks, 9 weeks about, what this is going to look like. And that range can anywhere be from hey, we'll need to go up 10% to we'll need to go up 50 to we'll need to go up 100. And it really, that's why I say it's a brand by brand, manufacturer by manufacturer, even model by model kind of review. And it's there's no clear answer at this point except to say that hey, if you're doubling this, even if it's just doubling a component, at some point we got to take the prices up to survive.
I like how I said I'd ask you a simple question, then made it nerdy. I tried to use simple math and got nerdier than anyone wants to really quick. But I think the quick hits are that prices are going up for you, and to operate on a livable margin, you need to raise the prices, and you're holding off on doing that until you are in a position where you need to acquire more stock, and then you have to make some choices, and hopefully things are settled by then. Is that the? Is that the
Yeah, I
Cliff
mean,
Notes?
the faster we've got a good idea on what the future holds, which I know is never set in stone, we'll be able to plan better. But we need until we've got that big picture answer of this is what it looks like for an extended period of time. We're just going manufacturer, brand by brand. Fortunately, we've got that good amount of stock that we already have. Everyone is going to tell you that everybody along the supply chain is doing what they can to minimize this as much as possible. Because in the end, right, you can't go above a certain price and expect that people will pay it. Because they simply might not have that kind of discretionary income. So we got to figure out a way to make it work. That's the challenge that we're all working through right now. And geez, if we had a clear picture and what it's going to look like, that would make it a lot easier. But we'll get through it and just take it a day at a time and not overreact. How's that sound?
There we go. That sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
All right, David. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Next, we have Nate from Arms and Armor. And the thing you need to know about Arms and Armor is they make really awesome swords, and you should check them out. They are based in the United States and predominantly make stuff in the United States. And so you might ask, how are you going to be affected by tariffs? And I'll let Nate explain. Nate, how have tariffs impacted business for you, if at all?
Not very much so far. So we've had a few orders canceled from foreign customers who have been mostly Canadian and European customers who are concerned about, what kind of costs they'll incur when these things, show up at customs. But these days, I'd say probably 85% of our business is domestic. And, we're here in Minneapolis. We make everything here that we sell. So, and the cost of supplies is likely to go up, I think, right? Steel prices are likely to rise. We'll see like our foundry costs are likely to rise, but that's not happening instantly. And those costs are a smaller proportion of our costs than labor is, right? So we'll see, but not as much as a lot of other things have impacted us so far. We're just lucky that, we've always been an American manufacturing company, and we never outsourced our 6 guys. So
yeah, are you using like imported steel or imported leather or anything like that, where the cost of those goods is going to go up, or is there something that is not entirely dissimilar to what you're paying now that's made in the US that you could switch to?
It's really hard to say. I'd say that almost all of the leather that you can get, which we just get at Tandy, right? It's almost all imported, especially for like the pig leather and goat leather that we often use. Sometimes it's American, sometimes it's not. It really depends on what that company has negotiated. I think that their costs are going to go up, and they'll pass that along to us. Steel, for a long time, most of it has come from China anyways. So that cost is going to go up for sure. And, I'm sure we'll have to pass some of that along. But we buy steel once a year or once every 2 years. And we've got a bunch right now. So we won't be buying some for a while, at least. So we'll see in 6 months or a year what stuff looks like, but I don't anticipate huge changes for us in the short term.
I suppose that's a little easier for you though, because while steel is probably a major component for you, it's still like an unfinished good, and then the majority of the value is the labor you're putting into it, right? Right.
Absolutely. Yep. So it's, if we were making bridges or or something at a steel or skyscrapers, we'd be in a different position. But yeah, the cost of the material is a relatively small part of the cost of our products.
So is it fair to say like the impact of things going up or down is if if prices go down on things that were tariffed or taxed before, that prices probably wouldn't be impacted a whole lot, because I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of tax or tariff right now on the steel and stuff that you've bought. But if it goes up 100%, then the cost of your products will have to go up. Maybe not a commensurate 100%, but something
they will go up some for sure. Yeah. And, it's been happening, during this inflationary period too. So like our foundry costs tripled since, 2019. And that has, been passed along. I don't imagine that they'll triple again because of these tariffs, I hope. If they do, then there's going to be a lot of other industries that are screaming way louder than us.
Go back to forging all the guards pretty soon.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the, one of the ways that we might have to roll. We'll see.
Oh my! I hear. I've heard nothing but complaints about having to forge all the guards. So I would imagine that it's not something you're looking forward to doing if that's necessary.
No, that would certainly raise costs. If it takes us twice as long to make something.
Yeah,
that is
would
going to
have
make
a big
it
impact.
more expensive.
Is there anything that you think sword buyers, as it specifically relates to the sword market, that people should know or might not be talked about very much in the media sphere, and all the things going on around tariffs and all the kind of conjecture going on? Is there something very pertinent that isn't getting talked about related to swords?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that, like, especially American sword consumers should be aware of is that they're in a pretty good spot sword wise if they're in the higher end market, right? That actually a bunch of the best sword makers in the world are American, and we really pioneered making high quality replicas. And so there's a lot of that expertise here. I think that people are going to find that the lower end market of, imported swords where, they're made in India or China, I think those are going to get more expensive. And that sucks for people, for sure. But, I would say, all right, instead of buying 3 Indian swords, you can buy an American sword and it'll still be there. But I know there are trade-offs as well.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be cut off from swords entirely. But, there's a premium for having something made in America by your neighbors. We pay a living wage. We pay our taxes and everything, and that costs money.
I've been to Arms and Armor, and all of you guys are flying a helicopter to work. So, I think...
Absolutely. A helicopter carrying a speedboat.
Yeah. Flew that Bezos dick rocket to work. I know what you guys are doing with all that sword money.
Yeah. We're going to launch a spear into space. Just wait.
All right. I appreciate the quick thoughts. Thank you, Nate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Now we have Patrick from Cass Iberia, and the thing you need to know about Cass Iberia is they import goods from all over the world to resell in the United States. They are not a reseller exactly, they are a wholesaler. So they would sell to organizations like Cult of Athena or different places. You can buy directly from them. I'll link their website in the description down below. Many people are probably familiar with Cass because they sell some of the brands that that got us into this hobby, frankly. But the gist is that Cass brings in a lot of products from China and is certainly impacted by the tariffs. I'm going to let Patrick explain. How have tariffs been? How have they impacted business for you?
Well, it's a loaded question right now. Well, at 145%, you can essentially say that it has shut everything down. And what I mean by that is we're not receiving any shipments. We have a shipment on the water before April 2nd. That's due in sometime in May, and we don't know what's going to happen with that shipment, if it's going to be 54% or 145%. And even the customs and broker people are kind of like, I don't know. So,
Okay.
and it's like, it doesn't make us feel any better about the future with all the things that we have going on, retooling Hanway, bringing that back into the market. I have some things to say, but that should answer that question first.
So it sounds like not. It's putting you in a weird spot, and an uncomfortable one.
Well, it puts everybody who's a manufacturer importer into an impossible spot, because literally since April 2nd, it's changed every day. And if you talk to your customs and broker people, they're just like, we're going to have to get back to you. It's the universal response. We're going to have to get back to you. We can't, we ask the question. It's like, we're going to have to get back to you, because it's literally every day. It's something new. It's been literally something every day for the last, new every day for the last 2 weeks. And if I wish I could tell you, just how nuts it is.
Just to give people maybe a little bit of insight here, when something ships from China, right? Very often you take ownership of it when it leaves the factory door, right? Mm-hmm. And a broker facilitates moving it to a port, and then from a port to a boat, orchestrating the travel. That dock of factory to on a boat can take a week or two sometimes. Then it's on a boat and over the sea takes, usually another 20 or so days. It can
45 to 60 days, depending.
Yeah, it can be more or less, but
depending on whether you're
China
coming
to
in
LA is usually a 2 week to 20-day journey. And then once it lands, it has to get offloaded and work through customs, and that can take a while, somewhere like a few days to sometimes a couple months on a bad trip, right?
We've had both.
And then it's got to get loaded on a train or on a truck and make its way somewhere else. So I think a lot of people might consider hey, well, if you have a little bit of an extension, or why didn't you make the time? It's not that you click buy and then you got in before. You click buy or make a plan. A factory builds work. There's slack in the system, and then by the time you've been planning this stuff for months or maybe years, and then by the time it arrives, it's really tough to predict when, because you're talking about a variance of weeks or months at a time. And so as regulations change day by day, or if they say hey, we're giving you 30 days notice, that that does fuck all.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
So I suppose that brings me to the question: if tariffs go up or down, what can customers expect from you in terms of pricing? What's the impact to them if they go up or down?
Well, let's just start. If tariffs go up, prices go up, and I was really surprised when this whole thing started how little people actually understood how tariffs work. And I'm going to make this statement, and I just want to stay on the front end. Apparently, my power's flickering on and off here.
Well, if you're about to talk about tariffs, ooh.
But yeah, really how tariffs work, it's a tax, and I don't like either party. I'm just going to lay it out. I don't care which party you voted for. I don't like either of them. To me, it's two wings on the same corrupt bird. Tariffs are a tax. And let me tell you how it's a tax. Because first, as an importer and manufacturer, we pay that tariff. China doesn't pay crap. We pay it. We have to write the U.S. government a check before that product hits our dock, the amount of that tariff. And that cost gets spread out over the cost of that container to each and every product. And that goes to the price, and that gets passed along to you. Xi Jinping is not writing any checks out to the U.S. government. Everybody from Walmart, Home Depot, Amazon, anybody who imports is writing that check to the U.S. government. No one in China. Now, I'm sure there's probably some people who've got some arrangements for some kickbacks and things like that. But every small business and every knife company that I know and I know several because I've been in the industry for over 20 years. We're all talking to each other. We're like, how are we going to get past this? Because it is absurd. There's no way anybody can import something at 145% tariff. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. It's not going to happen. So everybody is just not importing. Everybody that had stuff in production, they told them to stop. Now, in our case, we're not just selling in the U.S. We have other markets. We have Europe, we have Canada, Australia. So our production is still in motion. But I mean, the only places those products can go in the foreseeable future are to Australia, Canada, and Europe. Because are you going to buy the beloved bamboo mat katana at twice the price there, buddy?
More than even?
You
don't have more than 145% margin, that you can just,
If I did, I certainly wouldn't be having this conversation. And historically, Cass has always absorbed any tariff cost over the years. And what people do not remember is when Trump came into the office, he added a tariff already.
Yep.
There were tariffs in place before when Trump came in. Biden campaigned on removing those tariffs, to which he never did. So where everybody's coming up with now with this 200+%, they're just now catching on to what already was. So we've absorbed all that we can absorb. So yeah, we had planned already on June 1st to have a price increase. The problem that we're having right now is, I think we've settled on a number, but the problem is with everything changing on a daily basis, do we just go ahead with what we had planned? Do we need to jack it up more to compensate? Because there's only so much we can absorb. And, here's the other part of it. There's only so much the market can bear. And there's only so much people are willing to pay for products. An entry-level katana from our quality standpoint is about $500. Maybe street value $450, but whatever. We consider that an entry level for a high-end, well-made katana. Well, if it's $800 or $700, it's not really entry level anymore. You're getting up there into the mid range, of a handmade katana. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think there's really not a ton of competition in the space for China right now, particularly as it relates to katana, right? So if the $300 katana go to $800, right, or $500 goes to $800, it's still like everyone has to go up, right? And
right.
The de minimis rule is going away. I'm not sure exactly if that's like $25 to import, because if everyone else that's doing dropship related stuff can still buy a $300 sword and pay $25 for it, then that's not fair. But if it's a 30% or some other, I'm not sure exactly how that rule is going to work out. I got to research it more. But if all the prices go up, then the price for an entry level katana goes from $500 to $800, and everyone has to kind of. That's just the new barrier to entry now. And so I think there'll certainly be more people that on a whim or that like had an interest, will not be able to play, right? Because it's too expensive. Right. But
don't quote me on those prices. I'm just using it as an example.
No, I think you're fair. But the other thing is that like katanas aren't in a vacuum. So the entry level price point, I think, will be a barrier to entry in a way that it hasn't been in the past.
Yeah.
But when you talk about other things, like some of the fancy stuff that Dragon Kings makes, right? Like some of those are $1,500 swords. Well, if that $1,500 sword is now $3,000, right? Well, now you're competing with Citadel, which is just that's a product on a higher level, and it doesn't have the same import restrictions that.
But that one went up too. So now you've got a $3,000 katana that's probably going to be now $4,000 katana.
Yes.
Or in some cases, $5,000.
I don't know if they all went up. China's the one that seems like it didn't get the 90-day pause, and there's probably some more stuff to figure out. It changes all the time, but it sounds like At the moment, as of this conversation, China is at 140 something percent. And that doesn't include the cost of steel, which is going to be relevant for swords because it's a major part of the composition of their makeup. But that can add an additional percentage. And so, you could be seeing more than 140% tariff on swords from China. But swords from Cambodia, swords from the Philippines, swords from Japan, they don't have the same. Swords from India, they don't have the same. Really, they might have more, but they won't have the same really aggressive tariff at this point. And, there's still going to be some because they're steel, and that's universal. And there's still going to be some because tariffs are weird. But the high end, I think, gets a little bit weirder because some of those things are made outside. A person looking at an $8,000 sword from Japan might look at a sword for $1,500 from Dragon King and say, hey, this does the things that I need it to do. At a much more economic price. But now that sword might be, depending on the day, that sword could be $8,000. And if it is, then like you're not gonna limit the amount of people that can play, but also you're gonna drive them into the products that before were in a much different price league, and now they're the same. So, but that's fair. It's fair to say then that customers, if tariffs go up, prices go up. If tariffs go down, prices go down. But either way, it sounds like it might have caused a little bit of frustration in availability because you can't plan. You don't know what you're doing. So that means that you're if you don't know if they're going to sell, you're not going to buy them. And if you don't buy them, they're not on the shelf, and the products that you enjoy are not there.
Well, it's absurd to think that anybody can pay more in tariffs than the cost of goods. I mean, it's utter ridiculousness. I mean, it's just not. It's just nobody can do that. And I think what people are going to see is your Amazons and your Walmarts. They're going to start creeping. They're going to start cranking that stuff up 10% at a time every week between now and the next 90 days. You're going to see 5% here, 7% there. Then maybe another 10%, maybe another 5%. It's going to go up. It's just not going to be a snap price increase, and inflation will go through the roof. If it's not resolved in the 3 to 4 weeks that they're saying that this should be resolved as of today.
So what other things do you think people should know that maybe they don't know, especially as it relates to swords, right? That's what we're talking about. So what does the sword consumer have to look out for that isn't being talked about now?
Well, I mean, other than probably like I said, the entry level of being a sword owner is definitely going to go up. The money that we're having to pay, for tariffs will take money away from R&D, research and development, product development. So you're going to definitely see fewer new products on the market. Now, Cass has several new products planned for this year. We got 4 more new APOC items coming out. I want to say there's 2. Well, no, I'll take that back. We got 5 more APOC items coming out. We've got some swords from Kingston Arms in development. Of course, the big thing right now for us is we're retooling Cass Hanway brand to bring it back to the market. So obviously, if we're having to pay in tariffs, even at 54%, that 54%, if that's where it lands, I mean, is money that takes away from us being able to start production on other products. And I guess my frustration in this whole thing is, there is no talk about, using these tariffs to help companies like ours, shift production to other places. And there is no help for us. Here's the reality, folks. It was just start making your stuff in America. Well, yeah, where am I supposed to do that? There are no idle factories sitting somewhere in, anywhere in the Midwest that I can just go in, flip the switch on, and just crank the machine and start hammering out katana. It doesn't exist. The tooling doesn't exist. The skilled labor force doesn't exist. None of these things are there. So none of us, can just, in any industry that's dependent upon China, can just up and start manufacturing in another place, because you have tooling costs, which cost thousands of dollars. So you take that by 1,200 SKUs, you're talking, millions of dollars, at the end of the day, just to, depending on the size of your company, just to get going again. And where is the government helping those businesses to do that? There is none. There is no help.
There is not.
You can tell I'm a little emotional about it.
No, and it's well and good if you just say, well, make it in a different place. A factory takes time to build, right? And
Equipment.
People take time to train, and if you have an automation or any kind of mechanical process, that takes a lot of tooling and engineering to set up. It's not as though you can kind of move it. It's not just a tool over here that you can move to over there. It's more nuanced than that. And if you do move into America, then you have different supply chains for steel and all of the other things. And swords are not, it's not the same as making a car, right? And so you don't have the same priority in terms of demand. You're kind of, you're a very small fish in a very big pond, right? And so getting access to materials reliably that allow you to serve your customer in a timely manner, where if somebody says, I ordered a sword or I ordered a batch of swords, when they're going to be done and come in. Even if it were set up, it would certainly still be a really uncomfortable shift in the supply chain. But just having to shift and move a factory is not an easier thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Probably easier than making like a computer chip manufacturer, but still not an easy thing, If you had to build a house in a new spot, it's a time-consuming, hard thing. If somebody said, hey, you can't, we're burning this bitch down. You got to get out. you got a 30-day notice. It was a little short. We'll give you 90 days. Like, that's still not a lot of time to find a new place to live. And that's with moving to another area with a house over there in a system that's developed. Trying to move factories and personnel and an entire business is certainly a more challenging endeavor.
Well, and on top of that, you could talk about, U.S. currency issues and things like that. It's such a multi-layered and faceted issue, but the reality is no one in our industry, knives, swords, whatever, can turn on a dime. And I will go as far as to say this, and everybody who thinks that all these American-made knife companies don't have any problems, where do you think a lot of these people are getting their parts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the steel.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts hardware that are made overseas that get shipped in. A lot of packaging gets made overseas that gets shipped in. Now the packaging they can probably rotate in, but a lot of these knife companies they don't have tooling and machines to make parts.
A lot of the tooling as well. A lot of the went to go try to find a wood chipper the other day. All of them were made in China. Anyway, Patrick, I appreciate your time on the issue and jumping in. Hopefully there's good news in the future.
Well, I think, again, what scares me at the end of all this is, and this is Patrick Shipley talking, not, Patrick of Cass Iberia. What scares me is that there is something else in play here that is far more dangerous. And I just hope that people who get a bigger paycheck than me and get a little bit more information than me are making the right decisions on this. I understand everybody wants free trade. I think it's great. Everybody wants to protect our intellectual property rights. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But it seems like there are some in the manufacturing world that got a little bit more notice than the rest of us did that some of these things were going to happen. Because otherwise I would have chartered a plane and flown to China myself and loaded it down with as much steel as I could and then flown it back. From the amount of money that I'm going to have to now shell out in tariffs, I could have done that at least twice.
Yeah. A heads up would have been good. A bigger heads up.
Right.
or direction. Fair enough.
But I mean, I think a lot of us are just, our position right now is wait and see. Hopefully, the 3-week extension on April Fool's Day will come to an end soon. But I don't know what to tell you. But you can't expect prices to go up. I mean, it's going to feed inflation with like everybody else. You may not see it all at once, but it's going to creep up on you.
Well, it sounds like grim news from the cast front. I appreciate you giving some insight here, Patrick. Thank you much.
Well, you're welcome. Just remember, tariffs are taxes, and you're paying them.
Me? All my shit's free. I don't have to do anything.
Thanks.
Next, we have John from RVA Katana. Now, RVA Katana has a bigger YouTube presence than me, so you've probably heard John talk about the subject in some form or another, but the gist is John imports things from outside of the United States, namely from China, to sell at RVA Katana, and it certainly has a potential impact on his business. I'm going to let John explain. Thank you for taking a minute for me. I was hoping to chat with you about tariffs. I'm wondering if you can tell me how they've impacted business, what's going on.
Well, if anything, they've inserted a lot of uncertainty. Right now, we have yet to be charged for a tariff. My understanding is that there was some chaos over with customs and they didn't know quite how to implement it. But starting now, actually, I think it's starting today, in fact, anything that's shipped out of China will be subject to that tariff. And Shunfeng, which is the company, SF International, which is the company that is responsible for a lot of the air freight, they're going to be charging upfront so that they make sure it clears customs. So Right now, anything that's sent out, we have to pay a certain amount upfront so that it'll clear customs. Now, how much it is, I'm not even 100% sure. We're going to get a bill for it later.
That's fun. Do you have a ballpark in terms of where your upfront charges are? Is it like increasing prices 10%, 1,000%? Do you have some idea there?
We'll figure it out when we see the bill. But what I'm hoping, I'm assuming 145% based upon everything I've been seeing. Now, what they said is like a minimum of 100 or 145%. And so I think the people who are going to be impacted the most are the ones who are importing single swords, like people who go to eBay or talk to some of these forges directly, and they get a single sword shipped over. I think that's where they're going to get screwed. They're going to get hit by $100 tariff there. Now, for us, since they ship 50 swords per box, then we're going to get hit with 145%. And so that's probably good. I'm guessing it'll be a certain percent per sword. I think we're going to see the biggest impact is the swords that we sell between 500 and up. That's where you're going to see some pretty big buff increases. Now, by how much, I don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, it does seem a little bit weird. There's the tariff on things from China, but then there's also the tariff on steel, which is an important component in swords, and that's also a factor. So it is unfortunate. There's a fair bit of
there's been a tariff on steel for a while, and so I think they're more concerned with the finished product more than anything. So I think that they're talking about the tariff on steel is when you import steel bars or steel rods from China, because they produce a lot of steel too.
They do, and that is something I've heard will factor into the tariffs. But I guess I don't know either. So it'll be interesting to see what the bill is. Interesting is not the right word. I mean that in a kind of unfun interesting.
Yeah,
kind of interesting in if you blow your nose and blow out a $10 bill. That's interesting, but leaves you with more questions than anything. That's not a great analogy, John. I'm spiraling. It's too early for me. Haven't had enough coffee.
Well, that's what I feel is I'm blowing a $10 bill out of my nose, which I will never get back thanks to tariffs. But we're sort of looking for the long term. We have been talking. Cloudhammer is based out of Vietnam. That is, I should say, their production facility is based out of Vietnam. They ship to China for assembly, but the boss of Cloudhammer says, "Hey, we're going to start assembling in Vietnam now." Now that also means having to train workers to how to do things correctly. So that might be interesting.
Opportunity to fix those little ledges there. You start from the ground up. Maybe it'll be a positive.
Yeah, and then Cloudhammer also, we've been talking about having Cloudhammer blades mounted by Taitsuki, because Taitsuki hand makes every piece of the koshai to the blade. And so that's been something that we've been in discussion about for a while anyway, just because CloudHammer's fit and finishes, it's very uneven. But if we go through TightSki, we know that they're going to be a little better. And then there's some long trend forges that I deal with, and they're looking for workarounds, like possibly having a subsidiary company, establishing a subsidiary company in another country and shipping there first and then shipping. So it'll increase shipping charges, but hopefully not as much as the tariffs will be. So they're trying workarounds, but right now everything is so uncertain.
That is fair. Is it fair to assume then that the tariffs go up? If there are increases in tariffs, that cost will be passed on to the customer. You're just not sure what it's going to be yet.
Oh yeah, definitely. If we have to pay a tariff, then we can't lose money on the sword. So it won't be increasing a sword by 145%. It's based on our cost. So by how much we don't know at this particular point.
Okay.
So, but it will be passed on, and we'll see what happens to the industry.
Is there anything that you think is important to the sword community, but not being discussed in the media space around tariffs right now, that you think should maybe get more attention or people should know?
Well, I just think that since China is sort of the hub, that is like the production center for most swords right now, that we can all expect price increases. And by how much, it's really hard to say.
Fair enough. Well, that's all I had for you, John. I appreciate your time.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Next, we have Vali from Swordiz. The Swordiz website is one that you can go online and buy swords, but those swords don't ship from a warehouse in the United States. They typically ship from China. Not always. If you buy an item from Cass, it's likely going to come from Cass. However, if you buy something from Hanban, from Zisei, from Shadow Dancer, from any of the number of other brands they have, the majority of them are likely going to ship to you directly from China. They're very impacted by the de minimis rule, and I am going to let Vali explain further. How have tariffs impacted business for you?
They didn't impact my business yet, and it would be hard to measure how they will impact it in the future because Sword is a new business, and I've been running it for a little bit over 1 year. And last year, for example, we barely had sales, and people barely knew about us. And we are in the growth phase where the website is kind of picking up, and I don't have anything to measure with. It's definitely better than last year, but I don't know how it would have been if there were no tariffs involved at this point. And I still think I will still need to wait for another month or two until I can see how they actually impact my business, because at this point, a lot of customers order the products without any tariffs involved. So,
and what can customers expect from tariffs? So, if the tariff price goes up, if it goes down, is it safe to assume prices go up or prices go down, or does it work a different way?
Prices will definitely go up no matter what happens. I don't think tariffs will remain the way they are right now, 120%, or I stopped watching news. So I don't know exactly how much the tariffs are today because they've been changing for the past 3 weeks every day. But I highly think that they are not going to remain the same. And I think in 1 or 2 months, we will have something settled happen, like something that we can trust. And because the system right now, it's not well thought. For example, the tariffs would only target China and Hong Kong, I believe. It's not very clear from all the information that I've read, but every article or every official letter, it always mentions Hong Kong and China when it comes to de minimis. So I highly think this is only a trade negotiation between US and China. This is also what makes me think that it would not remain the same. They're like trying to work out on something. It's just they don't handle it very well. I don't know who to blame. but someone doesn't handle it very well. And I think in 1 or 2 months, they will work out on something that would not destroy any business in the US almost. And I would see a price increase of at least 10%, but I don't think the end customer will see a price increase of more than 20%, at least at the beginning. Going forward, I don't know what to predict because 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was no tariffs, and then there were 30% tariffs, and now there are like 120% tariffs. And it looks like, at this point, to me, it looks like it's a monopoly game played between friends and not running a country.
Fair enough. Are there things about the tariffs, as specifically as it relates to swords and sword buyers and people that are interested in this hobby and these products that isn't being talked about in the media or wasn't before you turned the news off?
I don't think there are any specific tariffs or any rules that applies to this industry, I believe.
For example, I know last time I checked, the tariffs were at 145%, at least as of filming today. That has some potential exceptions for steel or aluminum, which are incorporated in swords. But if they make it a good or a bad thing, I don't know. I've also heard that it could go up from there depending on some other thing. Anyway, 145% is kind of what I've heard. But as I understand it, that's for folks that are bringing goods into the United States as an importer and then selling them in the United States. Most of what you're doing, as I understand, is doing a drop ship. So you facilitate some orders, at least the custom katanas that I've reviewed for you. A customer goes on your site, orders a custom thing. They make it special for that customer in Longchuan, and then Hanban, for example, will send that product to the customer. But because that's like a drop ship that applies more to the de minimis rule, which is going away May 1st, and then also increasing June 1st, at least currently, which isn't getting talked about a lot in the media side of things, but I think is going to impact anyone who buys swords from China directly, because you are going to be taxed at a rate that is different. It's not going to be advertised, right? So the sword still might show that it's X amount of dollars, but then you're gonna have to pay some sort of import tax, or is that just going to raise the price on the good from the shipper in China? I'm not sure which.
This one nobody knows, to be honest. But I think we as a company will have to pay the tariffs, and we will increase the prices. And I don't see any difference from importing the swords to the US and then ship it to the customers from just shipping them outside of US, because they are pretty much the same tariffs. One is like 145%, one is 120%, or like $100. That's why it's like I stopped following the news, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to remain the same. So I don't want to stress about something that will change very soon. Like I said, right now the system it's not well thought, because it only targets China and Hong Kong, and it doesn't stop companies to move factories outside of China, but not necessarily to US. Or like you can find ways to send shipments from another countries, not just from China. Yeah. We also start to work. We are currently in the process of making a partnership with some forges outside of China as well. So we will find solutions. So,
that is fair.
From my point of view, I cannot say I'm 100% confident on this, but I'm pretty sure, we should wait patiently, because in 1 or 2 months, we will know for sure the new tariffs, and they will be definitely lower than they are right now. What I would recommend to our customers is just wait for a little bit, and for sure we will see a price increase, but not at this rate. Maybe 10-20%, because everything about raising prices or like raising tariffs the way they've been applied right now over the night from like 0% to 120%, it's suicidal tactic from my point of view.
Yes, it's not fun for anyone, and since so many of the swords have come from China and they've been improving, and that's frankly, if you're just looking for an affordable sword to enter the hobby or practice with, that's typically where it's going to come from. It certainly made the barrier to entry a little scarier, unless something changes, which it well could by the time this video releases. So,
yeah.
All right, Vali. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for giving me your thoughts. Last but certainly not least, we have Alex from Swordier. Swordier is a Chinese-based manufacturer of swords, and it certainly has had an impact on their business. I'm going to let Alex explain. I appreciate you taking time. I'm curious if you can give me your perspective on how tariffs have impacted the sword business for you so far.
Hi, Mershif. Thank you for having me. And the tariff has I got to say, a huge impact on us. And I can just use some examples back to in March, and we have those notifications that very soon the tariff goes up, and then the local courier, let's see, UPS, FedEx, and EMS, they kind of stop the service. I mean, especially from door to door. I mean, from one parcel, especially deliver the parcel to our end clients. It kind of all stopped. They kind of return all our swords. We manufacture swords, right? And they kind of return all the swords back to our local warehouse. We can't have to repackage everything. It takes a lot of time, and also a waste of money for sure. And definitely from the client's end, every day I got all those emails regarding why my swords returned or when my sword gonna be shipped. This is a huge impact, especially for business like us doing those business clients, B2C business model. And also we have agent and the distributors in the United States, and they can buy them in bunch, and they have to face with a huge problem with the tariff goes up. They have to raise up their price from their end, and this is not gonna work very well to the clients. I mean, it's not friendly to our clients because in Swordier, we have manufacturing those kind of budget longsword and also budget katanas. Yeah, we try to keep a low cost and to make it affordable to the people who love swords, who wanted to practice those martial arts, everything. And it's kind of huge problem. Even though in China, I can share some insights into the Chinese manufacturing center. Not just sword business, other business, they kind of stopped all the shipping services. There's a time, I think around in the middle of April, there's a lot of people, especially some business owner, they kind of posting videos we're gonna stop all the shipment to the United States. This is the way we kind of fight against all of the tariff, those punishment and everything. They kind of stop everything. They just say, "Oh, we will just wait and see." We just put our goods in the factory. We kind of stop the production. We just wait and see until all the things are cleared. This is something happened, and also the impact to the business, to the Chinese business.
I'd imagine that's really. That's got to be a huge challenge. You have customers that are counting on you and no way to deliver. And I imagine that it's hard to wait when your business relies on constant orders and manufacturing. To just stop must be what do you do?
I mean, at that moment, I was like taking at first when I see like the tariff goes up to 100, like 104%, I was like, man, this is gotta be kidding. There's gonna be like a child play. It's gonna end anytime soon. And then I was like watching the news on Twitter, and they said okay, it's gonna raise up like a 200% up or something. I was like, man, this is gonna be like everything gonna stop. This is definitely like a really a cold war or something in the trade war, and in this business, this is a lot of jeopardy gonna happen. And but now we have more solutions. I think we are making a few progress. So I think we can just figure out how to avoid those questions, avoid those, not just avoid the tariff. We can just kind of like de-minimize the impact on the tariff, everything, because there's one biggest issue which is unsolved yet. It's not confirmed yet, which is by the May the 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
May the 2nd, there's gonna be, you know, the we have those rules like the minimus exemption, like under $800. You know, I mean, this is my whole concern because my source kind of like under $800. And if that policy kind of like goes into effect, we have to pay like at least like a 10% up, and plus that, we have to pay at least like 75 extra dollars per package, or we have to pay extra 90% of the package. That depend on the price and also depend on the declared value for our package. So this is really, really a challenging part. And also for the sea shipping, I do mention that we have clients which buy bunch orders. The tariff for the sea shipping gonna be 145%, and also plus the rise up of the sea shipping. Back before our price, I can share with you, is around like a 25 RMB. That's gonna be like $3 per kg, and then they're gonna raise up to $4 per kg. That's a huge rise up for the sea shipping. Sea shipping used to be deemed as like a cheaper way to do all those shippings, everything, right? And especially use the containers to create like those bigger profits for the shipping. But this is gonna be like really a huge impact for all the clients, and also for the manufacturers in China. It's a huge.
So a sword that would have cost $100, if you send it by air, then you said an extra $75 to ship by air
per package. Collected by the courier.
So that's just on top. That's just extra, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
and also the client's gonna pay. I think the client's gonna pay like extra 10%, 10% of the declared value.
Okay, so the more or less the like $100 sword all of a sudden becomes like a $200 sword.
Exactly, at least.
So that was kind of my second question: is if the tariff goes up, then the cost to the user goes up, and if the tariff goes down, then does the cost to the user go down? If the problem is resolved and tariffs go away, does that mean the sword prices will go down, or do you think it will stay up because there's a little bit of nerves?
Well, because not everything is applied yet. Like what I said, we are waiting for the confirmation from that at that moment for that data to arrive. But so far, we just use our price policy as before. Nothing changed because we don't want to give those give our clients really cold feet when they purchasing it from us. And this is the best we can do. We just keep the price in the same level as we before. We haven't done any like the price rise up or everything raise up on our website and also to the clients which we dealing with the like a business to business. We didn't raise up the price yet. But right after the tariff, it's hard to say. This is something which is kind of like drive me a little bit in anxiety
Yeah.
status.
Yes, I would imagine.
We-
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of the anxiety, you probably have heard some of the American news and the media. Some people say 145%, and there's a lot of focus on the cost of tariffs. Is there anything specific to sword buyers, the sword industry, or to this particular industry that isn't being talked about in the media that you think people should know about?
Well, sword business is kind of like quite small compared to all those other products in China, and we don't have all those kind of things like policies, especially to the sword business. But as far as I know, sword business is kind of like listed as like a consumer goods as well. This is in China at least. So I would say it probably gonna have. I think it will have like a less impact compared to like a consumer good like a costume and also electronics, because sword is still like has a fairly higher value compared to those, especially those labor intensity business like the clothing and those cups, those consumer goods. And so for sword business, they can survive better for sure compared to other like mass produced products in China.
Yeah.
But still, it's really like catered to a small group for the sword. And we still gonna see a lot of compared to the proportion everything to the group everything the amount of the sword consuming, it's still like a lot of impact for sure.
Just one other question that I wasn't is maybe a little bit more applicable to you, and that is, if you're comfortable sharing, how much of your business goes to the United States versus the rest of the world? Obviously, the United States, where I live, has a tariff policy, but a number of other locations in the world do not. How much of your business goes to consumers in the United States versus anywhere else?
At least 60%. 60%. That's a huge amount for us to the United States. I mean, this is the largest client base in the United States for us, and I think this for the United States we will never. We would definitely like we cannot just say, oh, we just forget about the United States. No, that's not going to happen, because that's how we kind of like grow our business and also kind of like improve our source from all those clients from the United States. So definitely I can share you with this for like to minimize all those kind of impact for the tariff everything, because we still value our value the most for the United States market, because I mean politics is politics. I still love all of the people from the United States who always give me all of the insights, everything, share all the details. They shared me even the designs, drawings, and also and specifications, helping to improve and also growing the business. So basically, the United States is the first stop. We build up the warehouse to minimize all of the tariff everything, because when we have the warehouse, we can just be as an importer to import our product to our local warehouse, and so the clients don't have to pay the tariff, and they don't have to worry about like when the sword are gonna arrive anytime soon, and why I have to pay that extra money, all those kind of stuff. When we kind of like import like in bunches, like in a large amount, this will just minimize the tariff incurred to us and also incurred to the importer. So I think that, in that way, we can just try to not just avoid those tariff for the clients, but to offer a better service. Because in the end, if all the tariff happened, clients gonna hurt, not just us. Clients gonna hurt so bad.
I know you can really only speak for your business, but if you had to guess, does the U.S. make up most of the sales for swords in Longchuan, for example, or is there a larger market, outside of maybe just your business?
We are just talking about the sword business, right?
Yeah. Just for swords, and specifically, I know you're familiar with a number of sword companies in Longchuan. Is the U.S. the 60% of most companies' business, or is it smaller or bigger? Do different organizations have larger client bases in different parts of the world?
Well, for every company, whenever if they have like those overseas trading businesses, USA, the United States, is gonna be their number one export countries. So that's definitely for sure. So they gonna have like a huge impact if they have those tariffs. That's something I can guarantee to you, because for other, I did the research back before. We have those like group meetings normally like once a month with all those sword making business, sword manufacturers. Kind of like the government here is pretty good. Now I'm in Zhejiang. The government will just kind of like regroup all those manufacturers in one small room to find out, kind of like a brainstorming how we can just like overcome all those obstacles and also those tricky questions. And everybody is, whenever they have talking about those trading business for the sword business, they will just say, "Hey, this is not good." And it's hard if they can find like alternative market compared to the United States. I'm just being honest here. They don't have those like consuming capabilities. They don't have those buying forces compared to, let's say, Southeast Asia and other places. I mean,
you don't have a bunch of crazy people that want to buy swords. It's normal. Yeah, there's.
I mean, especially the lots like manufacturers in Longchuan here. Whenever they have those trading business, they kind of like their business rely on those katanas and also to the enemy katanas. Like not like a real sword, but they use it for the cosplay, everything. I think that's the. I think they export. They export a lot of those anime like replicas and also those anime katanas and also traditional katanas as well. Huge impact for sure, definitely.
Well, I appreciate you taking time, Alex. You've answered all the questions I had and more, and so thank you for providing the perspective as a manufacturer in China. That speaks English really well. It's great to hear your perspective on the tariffs and how they're impacting your business and how they're impacting your customers. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you to all the guests for jumping in on a quick call with me, letting me record. It's great. I think all of those provide really excellent and valuable perspectives. We have folks that are reselling, folks that are making things in the US, folks that are making things in China. And there's a whole bunch of different voices with different perspectives, all giving you some insight. I do want to recap some of the things that I heard from all of these folks from the before and after calls that I had. Not all of it was recorded on camera, and I can talk about some of the things that I think would have helped and would help going forward, and also some of the impact that we're going to see in the future, regardless of where those tariffs go, and then maybe some recommendations. So that's what I'm going to do now. Anyway, the gist is that all of these vendors seem to have say one thing, and that is that it's very inconsistent right now and unpredictable. And if you're trying to run a business that has supply chains where you need to get steel and make orders maybe months or years in advance, and you need to say things take weeks or months to manufacture, and then you have to sell them, it's really difficult to work in a business environment where the costs are very unpredictable. If the cost is high, people can adapt and they can say the product is going to cost this much. Do you want to buy it? They can make plans for how much materials they need. But when the cost bounces around, it's very, very challenging to advertise a price to a customer, to know how much of a thing that you need, to make any kind of plans. And so it puts everything in a very strange position, at a standstill, makes everyone uncomfortable, and makes you feel bad because you can't give your clients any answers. So I think one thing that would be a recommendation that I'm not particularly happy with, both personally as well as professionally, and how it's handled, is the unpredictability and variability. If costs were simply high, that would be something that we could plan and adapt to. But with bouncing around, it makes me just want to stop, and that is perhaps the worst. Which brings me to, what is the impact? Well, if tariffs go down, it's assumable that some of the newfound costs you might see could go down, but they might not. And there's a reason for that. If you have been kind of poked, if all of a sudden one day your business shut down, it could give you the idea that, hey, I don't have enough to survive this uncertain environment. I have to make more money to stay open. To weather the storm, I need a little bit bigger a buffer. So if the tariffs go down, the prices may not immediately go down, because everyone is kind of has this kicked puppy syndrome, where all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, there were tariffs imposed that jeopardized your ability to survive. So you might want a little bit more of a nest egg than you did before, given the environment that we're in. Now, if tariffs go up, it's certainly predictable that costs could go up. But you think that as a customer, hey, the tariff went up to 1,000%, things cost 1,000% more. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that, because all of these swords are manufactured with this very established supply chain in mind. And that means that, hey, today I'm making 1,000 swords, but if all of a sudden the cost goes up, I'm not going to sell as many of them. I went from making 1,000 swords to maybe making 2. Well, the economy of scale for that, as in the cost per unit, is going to go up substantially then. And all of the costs tend to go up. The labor you have to charge to make those swords, the machining and tools that you're able to kind of peanut butter spread over a lot of the swords or the product that you're making, all of that cost has to go into a smaller amount. That raises the cost of the product, and that raises then the tariff on the cost of that product. So it's a little bit of a snowball effect here. Also, when you move things around, today we were making things in China. If production moves, or all of a sudden you consider buying something, say, from Arms and Armor, well, as a US-based seller, they seem maybe perhaps immune in your mind to some of this. But if the industry as a whole is moving inside the United States, there isn't exactly bandwidth to do all of that stuff, right? So Arms and Armor may struggle to get their steel. They may not be prioritized because sword manufacturers are by nature generally pretty small manufacturers. They may not be able to get their pieces cast or something like that because of all of a sudden influx demand into all of the fittings casters that they were using are now casting auto parts, and they can't get their stuff in, which is going to make it potentially harder to get supply, or the cost to do business in those based on demand could go up. So even though you're not buying swords in China, just because the demand all of a sudden shifted as an industry, there could be cost elsewhere. There's also that kick puppy syndrome that I talked about. That's not a technical term, but it is something that says all of these folks are all of a sudden having their livelihood jeopardized. And if they're able to continue doing business, I think they're going to do so with a different perspective in mind. And that is that I need a little bit more bandwidth, a little bit more cushion to weather these unpredictable storms. And that may also have an impact on cost. Even if tariffs go down, even if everything returns to normal, I don't think the impact is quite yet felt, but we likely will in the future. Also, if you haven't seen prices go up, that's likely because we are all trying to figure out what's going on. But I would say those price changes are coming. One, because now goods are being imported at a higher tariff rate, and those costs sometimes take a little bit of time to work through the system. But two, you are likely going to see the impact of de minimis and all sorts of other things changing come early May. So those are some ideas. What should you do, though? If you were thinking about buying a sword, is now a good time to buy a sword? Yeah, I think it's always a good time to buy a sword. Hopefully you can buy a sword and get what you are paying for. I would speculate that the cost of things are going to go up. I think also in the secondhand market today, there are a lot of people that bought a sword for $300, and now that sword might be worth $600, which may make them a little bit more comfortable selling at $300. So I think the secondhand market as well may see a surge of different products come in now that the values are changed. It's a little bit easier for people to get out of what a sword that they paid, a sword that they bought for close to what they paid for, maybe even a little bit more or a little less. But either way, it changes the value of things in the secondhand market, which also has an impact. Sword friends, I babbled on long enough. Hopefully this video has given you something useful to go on. I know I prattled on about a bunch of different things. The summary is that tariffs are weird. Now is probably not a bad time to buy if you have the money to do so. Tomorrow is going to be weird too, though. There may be more stuff on the secondhand market. Hopefully the video gave you some insight in what to do. If not, hopefully it was entertaining or educational. That's all I got. And again, special thanks to the folks that hopped on camera with me. Special thanks as well to the folks that didn't hop on camera with me, but would have. I know some schedules didn't align, but I was very impressed with the community's willingness to participate in this little video here. Cheers, everyone, and thanks for watching.